Yes, ma'am.
Mr. President, I'd like to ask you a follow-up question on Grant. He obviously used destruction tactics to be able to win the war, taking out Southern factories, homes, farms, you name it. How do you plan to rebuild the South, their economy, and who's going to pay for that to help the Southern folks get back to their way of life?
Well, now, that total warfare of what you speak, some of that was Sherman's idea as well. So I ain't quite figured out who was doing what when, but it got the point across that we was up to business going across Georgia. Now, reports to my office in the Executive Mansion indicate that some of those fires may have been started by our dissatisfied Southern brethren. So I just ask you not to paint with such a broad brush that you take some good Union officers with you while you're painting. But they have resources in the South that we need in our country and in Europe. And we will begin to market those products and get top dollar and rebuild the South as it was when it was ours the first time.
Hello, Mr. President. My name is Jamie Powell, and I'm a student reporter from the Illinois Student News Network and WQNA out at Capital Area Career Center. On a lighter note, I am from the good old town of Athens, Illinois, and I was just wondering what kind of impact did you have from that little town? I have an understanding that you did a post office job there.
Now she's talking about patronage, and I'm a fan of patronage. I think all the folks that support the administration should have jobs. That's how we do politics. And I'm thinking it's not going to go away anytime soon. But that little job down there kept me from going bankrupt. I hadn't done very well in business over the years. And so that appointment to that little post office gave me a chance to see folks, talk some politics over the counter, tell some stories, and build a political base, if you will, so that if I should have wanted to run for an office, they'd help me get elected. And I appreciate your question on a lighter note.
Mr. President, I'm hoping you could put to rest some rampant rumors that Vice President Johnson was drunk at the recent inaugural, and if so, can he be trusted to lead the nation should he be called upon in that capacity?
Well, there seems to be a lot of alcohol passing through my administration, and me being a teetotaler and all, I did drink once. Made me feel flabby. Never drank it again. But as to Johnson's malady, sir, he was sick with an illness. And as the custom, I'm sure it is, with the media, and Blanchett, I want you to do a little homework for me. I want you to go down to the saloon on the corner when we're done here with this event and see who commences in the door. Then report back to me. If we're going to talk about alcohol, we're going to have to talk about it on both sides. Thanks, Blanchett. He was ill, and as is custom with some folks of the day, you take a little nip for medicinal purposes. Johnson was sick, and that nip got to him. But I think he will be fine as a vice president to finish out my term, and things will be just fine.
As we said earlier...
Now, sir, you hop right up there now and get right in there behind him. No, you go ahead. You get right up there in line. Don't let them squeeze you out.
I'll move this along.
Yes, sir.
Mr. President, now that hundreds of thousands of lives have been lost in this war, I'm curious if you could answer, first of all, if you had any idea that the war would have lasted as long as it did and be as bloody as it did. And why, frankly, sir, did you fight this hard to defend the Union when, why not, as some said, General McClellan said, just let the South go and we could live in harmony with them as we do with our neighbors in Canada?
Our loss is great. I can only say I hope that the memory of those young men whose lives were laid on the altar of liberty will serve as a balm to those families. And I think it was my friend Douglas, in some of that popular sovereignty talk he had back in '58 about the country being whole, Douglas had a big view of the world. He knew of the wars. We finished the Crimean in '59. And that was all about the European history, was fighting over land, a little bit here and a little bit there. And this government is the last best hope for democracy, that we can live as one. And we are indeed now. Back to that government. Of the people, by the people, for the people, that it won't perish. But we remember those troops that passed on doing their duty.
Hello, my name is Demetrius Enestroza, and I'm with the Illinois Student News Network at CACC. And I was wanting to know, do you have any grudges against Jefferson Davis by any chance?
Well, as far as to... And Davis served his country well as a Secretary of War and as a senator from Mississippi. He thought he had an idea to carry out a plan one way, and it didn't match with what we would do as a country. Now, I think he was aggravated about some other things, because I heard tell that back in the mid-'50s, Senator Douglas was selling shares for a place called Superior, Wisconsin. And he was thinking that the railroad would go west on a northern route, and they could bring in marketable goods into the lake to this place called Superior, Wisconsin. And Douglas owned those shares and was selling more. And I believe Jefferson Davis had invested in those shares. And then Douglas sold them all right before the crash of '57. Took the money to the bank and left all those senators holding paper that was worth nothing. So I think maybe Davis got crossways with politics before 1861. Because he was the fella arguing on the Senate floor that the Western Railroad should go that way on a southern route. And I was thinking he thought Mississippi would be a good place. We just disagreed with our methods, but if Davis comes out of hiding, I'd be happy to shake his hand if he'd only take the oath to obey the Constitution.